Today you're in for a treat, guys. Taylor Slattery from Adreno joins me. It was day one of a multi-day charter. Anyway, hey, my name's Isaac, aka Shrek, the host of the new Spearo podcast. This is the show where I go and interview crazy Spearos from all parts of the world. Today it's a local dude. It's Taylor Slattery. And really interesting interview. The Veterans Vault, we focus in on getting systematic with a dive, really thinking your way through the process to maximize sort of your time on the bottom. A really cool and thoughtful sort of way to go about conducting a dive. And there's multiple sort of points you've got to sort of hit. And it's just a sort of a mental checklist you can run through to, just like I say, like maximize your time on the bottom, especially if you're diving deep and you just really want to extract the most out of every dive you're doing. It's just a way to look at it and a way to think about things. Really interesting idea. And so that's today's Veterans Vault focus. We're going to get into that very shortly. I just had one quick review for 99 Tips to Get Better at Spearfishing, the audiobook. If you go to noobspearo.com/audible, AUDIBLE, you can get this book for free, as well as a 30-day free trial for Audible. But anyway, hey, this guy is anonymous. He says, amazing book. Amazing, must listen if you're getting into spearfishing, and check out their podcast to keep you frothing. Cool little review there. So, hey, let's get into this interview with Taylor Slattery. Just a quick shout out for Robin Cornelian, who's editing this episode. Thanks for your work, mate. Great podcast producer. Loving your work. Let's hook in. Taylor Slattery, everyone. This episode of the Noob Spearo podcast is brought to you by the world's greatest spearfishing magazine, Spearing Magazine. There are news and reviews for the latest spearfishing equipment and gadgets inside. There's practical how-to and DIY type articles. There's spearing adventures from crazy noobers like you from all over the world. And it's a magazine that you can pick up or you can look at, and if you've got the digital subscription, you can flick through and let it inspire your next spearfishing adventure. Even if you're having a dry run, keep the stoke alive. Check it out at spearingmagazine.com. If you're away from the good old USA, though, check out the international subscription. That's at spearingmagazine.com. Welcome to the Noob Spearo podcast, Taylor.
Beautiful. Thank you for having me, mate.
Tell us a bit about yourself.
So my name's Taylor Slattery. I've been spearfishing for probably 10 years now, just about. I grew up spearfishing on the northern New South Wales. Just based out of Grafton, but I used to do a lot of diving around anywhere from Port Macquarie all the way up to Tweed Heads. Just grew up shore diving as a little grom. Ran around the place. We used to have a study day for school from year 10 onwards. So you'd have Monday, Tuesday school, Wednesday off, Thursday, Friday school. So Tuesdays.
All the New South Wales school system. I'm loving it.
So we just used to, me and some of the boys, a lot of the guys were surfers, so I'd go down to a place called Mulloway. And
called Mulloway?
Mulloway, yeah. So we stayed in a caravan park there, and, being 17-year-olds with our P-plates and free reign of the place, we'd get on the beers and stuff around. But, one day I woke up, I remember just seeing a hand spear, and that was, what's that for? And so we went hand spearing from then on, and I think the next day I went and bought a pelage. Bought my first pelage.
Oh, you did the same.
Yeah, I did the same as you. When you told me about it, I was like, I did the same. So I bought a pelage Venom, 20mm rubber, couldn't load it, didn't know what I was doing, and I went out there and just started chasing Luderick.
Yep.
And it just went from there. Yeah.
So describe Luderick for people that aren't familiar with them.
So they're a rock blackfish. So they're typically found all around your headlands. They're grey.
That's all good.
They're typically grey with black bars down them.
Yep.
You see them right up in the shallows. They really like rock lettuce, like what you see lettuce.
Yep.
It's that light green.
They're a straight weed eater, aren't they?
Yeah. And you can tell, definitely.
There's a specialist type of line fisher that target them, isn't there?
Yeah, they use float. Like they'll use a little float and half a foot or a foot of line below it, and they'll just ride them up and down the headlands. But
weird species to target for a line fisherman, given the other varieties of fish out there.
Yeah.
But Luderick are quite a good species, I think, when you're first starting, because they're just...
They're a great staple fish, definitely.
And they're prolific. They're
Everywhere.
Decent size.
Yeah,
they're not too small. And if you gut them and get them, they go all right.
You definitely got to gut them.
Especially when you're not fussy.
Definitely got to gut them.
Yeah.
They're pretty stinky once you open them up, and like a bit of a greyer fillet. But yeah, grew up chasing those guys, and it just, when you stumble upon mulloway on your local headland, that just opens your eyes to a whole new world from then on. So
Slattery, did you take a couple back to your mum's place and fillet them in the sink?
No, not the sink.
You never did it?
No.
Oh, I did it once.
Shot me.
Yeah, I felt like I was going to get shot. Maybe that's why I'm not married anymore. But Slattery, do you think they're a signalling species? Like, if you've got Slattery around, do you often think, okay, there might be some of these around as well?
No, not so much, no.
Okay.
I think they're pretty prolific just about wherever you go, as long as there's a bit of wash. There's not too many headlands you won't find them on.
Okay, cool.
There's definitely, I wouldn't say they're a signalling fish, but I see, for me, I found like grey nose sharks are a really good signalling fish for mulloway and stuff.
Okay.
That's what I look for. If I find grey nose sharks, there's going to be mulloway in the area.
And yesterday we were talking actually about finding mulloway or filming them, and they've got like obvious injuries on them, like they've been clearly barked up by something, and we were sort of theorising that it might be grey nurse.
Definitely. And
so this sort of further affirms sort of what you're talking about.
Yeah, well, I've got some of the best ledges that I've found. When they really hold, you'll have an eastern facing ledge, and with a bit of an undercut, you'll see a lot of the time you'll see grey nose sharks kind of tucked up behind underneath them or cruising out on the sand edges. I'm not sure if they find like mulloway find comfort in hanging around those big sharks or something, but a lot of the time, even if you look at Julian Rocks and places like that, grey nose sharks, and they're prolific mulloway everywhere over there. So
those relationships between species, like when you spend a bit of time on the bottom or observing, like spearfishing and stuff, you do start to notice some of these little things and develop your own theories.
Yeah, definitely theories.
That's
for sure.
Yeah. But it's interesting, just discussion nonetheless. I guess paralleling your spearfishing journey, you started working at Adreno fairly soon after.
Yeah. I moved to Brisbane, chasing a girl in uni and chasing dreams into the city from a little place called Grafton, and moved to Brisbane and didn't really know what I was going to do. I was studying and I was concreting and doing all these other things, and kind of just loved my spearfishing at the time, so I just kept knocking on the door of Adreno and just kept asking for a job until they got sick of me and gave me a job. I was lucky enough to get a run and haven't looked back really since. It's been a little whirlwind trip the last 8 years. So. And
working in a shop gives you you have 150 conversations about spearfishing every day, and you're looking at gear, you're rigging gear all day long. Surely it must give you extra insights into the sport that most people aren't privy to because we're just weekend Spearos or whatever. Yeah,
definitely. But a lot of it is you really got to work it out yourself, I think, to an extent anyway. Everyone can really point you in the right direction, but putting it to action, you definitely do find that working in the shop every day, you're hearing people talking about different species, different gear that they really enjoy. A lot of the time, the biggest thing that I find that I learn the most of is just literally being in the water. Like every single time you learn something more in the water. Like you said, we all have our own theories on what works and what doesn't, but I think you really start putting stuff into action, and some theories work in different areas, different species.
Today we saw that play out. There were 4 dories that left out from the boat. We're day one into this trip out to the bunker group, and 4 dories left in sort of different order, and everyone headed to a different part of the reef. The guys that were a little bit more premeditated and had the patience to motor out for a little bit longer and work out, I think, where the current was maybe hitting the front end of that reef. They are the ones that got the biscuit, and we saw 4 very different boxes of fish get put back in.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think it's literally that. You do start to learn, what currents, how they're hitting different parts of reefs, what you're really looking for. But it also depends on what you're chasing. Like you can definitely see that the people who saw Spanish, they were on the edges on those pressure points where that current was hitting. So they were definitely in for a lot more of a chance rather than on this leeway side where there wasn't too much current running in the right direction. Not really hitting any pressure points and not having any upwellings on the front of those reefs. But yeah. You definitely see it play out really differently. It was pretty cool to see.
My boat felt like we were urgent teenagers, and we were just, and we were just like, oh, that'll do. And like it was literally like, there's some good wommies, and we were 10 minutes motor from the boat, and we were all ready to get in and get wet and jump in. And maybe if we had a little bit more time and we were a little bit more patient, we would have.
Maybe, or it could have went the other way.
Yeah.
Who knows? And that's the beautiful thing of it, isn't it? Like, I think a big thing is trying out exactly like. It's always good to try any thought you have. I think you should try it. Because then at least you can move on.
Yeah.
For me, I do a lot of like today. We jumped straight in. We did a 10-15 minute drift. Yeah, the boys shot a few nice little trout, but you could tell that the ground wasn't really there. There wasn't as much bait, so you're not going to really redo that drift again.
Yeah.
So we made the decision, move out another 50 meters, move out from 12 meters into 16 meters, and that's when we saw some really good fish, and that's a big thing. I kind of don't know who said it to me, but you don't leave fish to find fish.
Yeah,
is a big thing. Obviously, depending on if you haven't shot fish, you don't leave those spots. Like you keep trying, even if you're not able to get the shots off on them. You don't really leave fish to find fish, and so that's what we did. We shot some really nice trout. I think we all landed a good trout on that second drift, and that third drift we went out into 19, 20 meters, and there was no fish to be seen.
Yeah.
So we came back in again. Trout, Spanish mackerel. We started seeing the moo, all your big IC brims.
Yep.
It was. I think it's really just getting in, trying out your idea. Doesn't work. Okay, move on. What's next? Just try something else. Yeah. What's the definition of being crazy or something? Is it?
That's stupid.
Stupid.
It's Einstein. He's doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. Yeah. That was an Einstein one. That one, but it's a good one. Yeah. I mean, going back to your rock hopping days. So you're diving all of these headlands, and it's kind of headland sand, and I mean it's fairly
monotonous,
tough guesswork. Wondering where to go diving.
Absolutely.
But I mean, so you started on Slattery. What was sort of your progression, and what were the obstacles you had along the way?
Look, I was really lucky. Within buying a gun, within 3 weeks, living in a small town, you find out who dives, who doesn't. So there was 2 other divers in the area, and they had a boat.
Yeah.
Brad and Grant Arnott out of Mini Waters.
Brothers.
Yeah, brothers. Yeah. They said, come out with us. So I remember, within 2 or 3 weeks of buying a gun, I was out there chasing Eastern Green Crays.
Yeah.
Watching their old boy. We dive with their old boy. Learn a few things off him.
Yeah.
So I've jumped in. Yeah, for me, I was 15 or 16 years old, jumping in 150 metres offshore. This old bloke's pulling wobbegongs out of caves to grab Easterns, and I'm just, what have I got myself into, at that point? And then, just really starting to learn from there is that it's definitely time in the water. Like, those guys just knew that place like the back of their hand. There's a lot of people who would come to the area and say there's no fish, but they'd find their feed. So I was really lucky. I got access to a boat pretty quickly.
And experienced Spearos.
Yeah.
With local knowledge.
Local knowledge, new gear, good understanding of gear for sure, and pointed me in the right direction. So they were pretty well the tipping point for me to really point me in the right direction. Otherwise, I could have been bashing around on headlands forever and not really knowing what's happening.
Yeah.
But it took me a long time. I didn't shoot what most people would say is a good fish for, I think, a year and a half. I remember, chase, for me, the yellowtail kingfish was...
Oh, yeah.
I'm
still like that. I still froth on them.
They're awesome.
They're not even particularly difficult, but I just love the way they're exciting to shoot. They're a big fish. They swim awesome. They've got plenty of character. They go nuts when you put that first shot on you and you get maybe 5 or 10 minutes out of them, but, And then I love the way they eat. I haven't had a soft one or any of these crazy
yeah.
things that people complain about, so I always like them.
Yeah. I remember the day I remember shooting it.
What was it? So
we're diving in a place called Southern Drop.
Yeah.
And the boys they've been sassing me for quite a long time, like, oh, when are you going to shoot a fish? Like, come on, like, putting the pressure on.
Yeah.
And I remember I'd put the shot in. I knew I've dropped down. It's probably about 18 meters.
Wow, decent.
Yeah.
Depth.
So because I'd been diving for at that point I'd been diving for a while. I hadn't really shot too many fish, but was pretty comfortable in the water. In a school of six or so, just came in, turned broadside perfectly. Just letting them come to me, not really attacking them or putting too much pressure on them. Turning broadside, bang, straight in the shoulder, like above that pec, and that shoulder, out the gill plate. I just remember hitting the surface and being like, I can't remember what I said, but it was something like, I don't know, something absolutely stupid.
Who's the man now, boys? Something.
Tell me how big it is. Pretty well, something along those lines. But and absolutely frothing. And from that day on was the same thing again. It's just that one. It's always. Even today, shooting a really nice trout, you still go back to those first few fish you shot, and it's still just as stoked. Yeah, for sure. Like, I know that I'm going to fillet that fish and take it home and eat it with good friends. Yeah. That's what it's all about. Yeah, for sure, man. Okay, so you shot your first yellowtail. That was a big run on the board. Yeah. What about the freediving side of things? Did you have any struggles with that? Because in 18 months you got down to 18 meters, so. Yep. That's pretty fast progression, and for a lot of people anyway. Definitely. Did you have any difficulties? I mean, you talk about hands-free equalizing now. You've been blessed with it? Yeah, I've been very, very lucky. I've definitely had I've had pain from big days of diving, and a little bit of struggle every now and then not equalizing, but everyone has those days. But no, I was really lucky in that point where living half an hour from the coast, working as a concreter at the time, or when I was a school kid, was you've got the flexibility. You don't have responsibility. So you run, you get you knocked off early. Okay, we're going diving. The weather's good, we're on. So I was diving 2 to 3 days a week from pretty much when I was 17 onwards, I'd say. So I had a good little purple patch there, and dived quite a bit. And same thing, like diving with the Arnott's and just working out those spots. So chasing pearl perch, mulloway, trag, kingfish, things like that. But it was really cool learning really that a lot of it's seasonal as well. There are, above water it might not seem too seasonal, but as far as water temperatures go, currents go, winds, it's definitely seasonal. Coming into winter now, this last month has been one of the best winters we've had. Yeah. Water's clean, conditions are good on topside. We've had one of the best westerlies blown off Brisbane for a very long time. We had a 30 knot westerly that blew for a couple of days. Bay cleaned up. Oh, yeah. It's exciting times. It opens up a whole lot of spots that are barely diveable, if at all, most of the year. Yeah, absolutely. But a lot of the days have been not too fishy though. Has that been your experience, or am I just going in the wrong spots? Yeah, look, you can always. I learned a big lesson in Caldwell, like I was telling you last night, the Caldwell Cup a couple of years ago diving, and it was really interesting to see, Tim Mack, Bryson Sheehy come diving in. We get out to Moreton Island, top of the Cape, and it's an uphill current. I've never dived the place in an uphill current. Yeah. And so our usual spots just not turning on. It was completely threw a spanner in the works, like you don't. It's at those times, you don't really know your spots too well, or know where. Well, during those seasons, during those currents, those winds, that was a really big thing. That's why Tim Mack and those guys are really, really successful in what they do. Is they have plans for whatever happens. They get out there, the currents in that direction. Oh well, we're doing this today, and that's the direction they go. Yeah. So I think I've been lucky. Like I've been back in Brisbane now for 3 months after my Perth stint, and I've landed some beautiful fish, which I'm stoked about. It's definitely not been as good as a couple of years ago. I think there's definitely been a lot more pressure on the on a lot of spots off Brisbane. But I think that's a bit of a trend we're all seeing everywhere these days.
It's an interesting conversation to have too, I think, about spearfishing pressure, because it's not something that maybe people want to talk about. They want to think that Spearos are safe, sustainable, selective, but the reality is if 10 guys are diving a spot 5 out of 7 days a week, that place is exposed to a unique style of pressure on that fishery, and
definitely
there's no doubt it has an impact.
And at the end of the day, the sports is only as sustainable as the person holding the gun. Like, you and I can be as sustainable as we think, but there might be someone out there shooting 15 undersized huskies that day or something like that. But like, there are species like black spot tuskfish that linos can't really chase them or target those species, but as spearfishermen, we actively target those species.
Yeah.
So, when you see spots that are in a decline of that fish, it's pretty indicative that it's been hit pretty hard by spearfishermen. Same with your gold spot cod, stuff like that.
Four strong reasons to shop at spearfishing.com.au. They have a price beat guarantee on any Australian price for spearfishing equipment if they stock it. $15 flat rate shipping across Australia. They've got a 30-day hassles-free returns policy, and you can save $20 on every purchase over $200 by using the code Spearo at checkout when you shop online. Added to that, if you order gear online, it arrives quickly, it's very well packaged. It's a literal no-brainer if you're a Spearo in Australia. Shop at spearfishing.com.au, use the code Spearo and save. They've done some studies that I read about in the Med and stuff where they've studied the fish response to human activity, and after sustained spearfishing pressure, the fish develop a response where they stay further away, and and they're actually able to adapt. Like, so there's an equilibrium factor built into even human predation, which I think is really interesting. And it says that an area can recover, however, we still have an impact, and we've still got to be responsible with it. And good Spearos will exploit even that wariness of fish, because all we do is think about hunting, and do you know what I mean? It's this constant battle, and I mean there's a lot of joy in it. But I think, there's no doubt we have an impact, and we have to think about it.
Absolutely, yeah, definitely.
But it's kind of that delicate line we walk, I guess. Yep. And with a growing human population and possibly a growing sport of spearfishing, it's something that
it's definitely a growing sport. It's massive. The last few years, it's been obviously seeing the amount of people coming through the shops. It's exciting. It's really cool. It's really cool to see people getting out there and enjoying what you and I are enjoying on this trip. Obviously we could be as selfish as we want, and hopefully no one's hitting our spots. But
do you think that was the attitude 10 years ago? That was the prevailing attitude. It was like, we don't really want a whole bunch of people doing this. We're quite happy that there's half a dozen of us.
Absolutely.
And
to an extent, definitely.
Yeah,
but it's also, Instagram's made free diving and spearfishing pretty sexy, Like, sex sells, and it's definitely in this day and age, there's a lot of people who want to be self-sufficient, especially after all this COVID-19 stuff. I think a lot of people are starting to think like, I want to be able to, shoot some fish or fill my freezer with sustainably caught food. And definitely understanding where their food comes from, because 95 to 99% of people probably don't really know where their meat comes from, their fish.
But honestly, like most of the dudes that are out here, that we've bought vacuum pack sealers, we've bought vacuum pack bags.
Definitely.
They've got Nikos and labels, and people are taking a lot of care with what they catch, and maybe even that's different than a lot of years ago where a lot of fish got filleted and shucked in, and it was divvied up at the end, and like it wasn't really a primary focus. Now I think there's a bit more value on the resource as well. People are a bit more conscious about it. People know how to cook their fish, I think, better. And there's a bit more appreciation for it, and there's
definitely,
I don't know, there's still killers. Like, there's still people. A lot of people just seem to, you want to shoot what they want to eat, and that's it. So
definitely. Well, that's the boss always pays me out about, he calls me a vegan Spearo, because I'll shoot maybe one or two fish if I'm lucky in a couple of weeks, But for me, spearfishing is about getting out there in the water and enjoying it. I've seen, seen some pretty cool things today. Saw eagle rays cruising along the bottom, silting up the bottom, and then eating crustaceans underneath the sand. I haven't seen that in a long time. That's pretty cool. Yeah, at the end of the day, like today was,
That's crazy because we've ended up we've had a guy medevaced out off the boat today. Yeah. He got medevaced out. Just tell a little bit about what happened.
Oh yeah, like I've never experienced anything like I've had a few.
It sounds like you have actually.
I've had a few close calls.
You're the jinx. You're the X factor that causes it.
Well, today one of the boys was had a pretty big Spanish mackerel in his hands, and just. I'm not too sure. I wasn't in the water. I haven't seen any footage of it, but it was just a really big Spanish mackerel that was playing up in his hands, and in the process, a knife ended up in his leg, which is obviously no good.
Yeah. Apparently, he's cut the tendon and the muscles pulled back up in his leg.
I saw it. Yeah,
and bunched up. Oh, you saw it.
Yeah. So taking him up for the RACQ care flight to pull him out. He was sitting there and he pulled his leg up to show the paramedic, and just seeing that lump in the top of his quad was
pretty alarming.
Alarming for sure, and hats off to Wayne. I couldn't imagine myself being too calm.
So that's Wayne Judge. Like, our listeners might know him because he's been on a couple of episodes as well. So
definitely,
he
was cool, calm, and collected. I've never,
subduing a 21.5 kilo Spanish mackerel or king mackerel up in some parts of the world, and it sounds like he's had the fish between his legs, between his knees,
good old bear
two hands in the gills, and then he's had a knife in his right hand, getting ready to slip the icky in, and it's just wrestled him, and he stabbed himself in the leg, and then it smashed it around a little bit while it's in there, and jeebus, and like that helicopter coming in on the back of this vessel today.
Pretty surreal, isn't it?
Oh yeah, I'll have to link up some videos and stuff in today's show notes so people can have a look at it. But holy shit, what a mess!
Oh, and then coming back, and Joel as well. Joel, one of the other boys, is playing around with some burleying and dropped a knife and dropped it into his leg as well. So we've got another one with only a little flesh wound, but definitely still enough to
tomorrow
wake up call. That's
tomorrow
for sure.
We'll be starting with the 5 a.m. safety with knives. Bloody,
I think we'll get an angle grinded and turn them all into bloody take the points off them.
Yeah. But we like having a point on a dive knife.
Yeah.
But it's something you've got to respect so much. And like when these boys both did their injuries, I thought, shit, that could have been any of us. And like I've done little injuries with it.
Yeah.
And that's how you learn.
Yeah.
It's a bad way to learn with a knife.
Oh, especially, it's a bad way to learn.
Yeah.
I've got a few scars on my hands from it, and some of the guys are pretty embarrassed about it, but we've all done it.
One of my first jobs was working in a meatworks.
Oh, yeah?
And I started in the packing department, thankfully, because I was cuck-handed, as my someone used to say to me. But by the time, like learning knife skills and how to handle knives safely is a real art. And a lot of people jump into spearfishing without any background with knives, and then you go from not really using them to all of a sudden having two maybe strapped here.
Yep.
And how you put it back in the holster on your body is something you got to be careful about, whether it's on your leg or in your weight belt or up on your arm. And a lot of people don't even think about it. It's just one of those things that we've learned over years. But I think it's actually, now thinking about it, it's like something we should probably talk more about.
It's definitely one of the biggest. Yeah, it is definitely one of the biggest. Like, it's probably where most of the injuries have come from. For me, today obviously there's 2 injuries today. I've been on a boat going back a couple of years, probably 2 years. We were out of Stradbroke Island, out of the Wave Rider boy.
Yeah.
And taking one of the guys out to shoot his first dolphin fish. We roll over the side. Sure enough, really nice school of dolphin fish come through. Turns broadside, puts a really nice holding shot onto it, but in his excitement, it's just straight into it. He's straight onto his mono, he's pulling, he's holding on, he's not really giving it any room at all. He gets it into his hand, he's pretty green, he's pretty fresh.
Yeah.
And I see him get his knife out, I'm like, no, like, put it away, but he's gill deep in it. He's got his hands all up in it, so he puts the knife to it. Big kick from a 5 or 6 kilo dolphin fish. It kicks on the surface, gets out of his hand, and knife slips right through the wrist. In that, he flinches, he pulls it in, puts it right between his ribs as well. And I just see all this unfold in front of me, and I'm like, okay. So I take the gun off him. Okay, get in the boat, we land the fish, we get in. and you can see he's gone white. And yep, check the wrist. Okay, take my weight belt off. Pull my weight belt.
Tourniquet.
Yeah, not too tight, just enough for like was pressure really effectively on it.
Yep. Yeah, I think direct on wound can be good. You don't have to necessarily be above it.
Exactly.
And cutting off that full artery. It can just be
Just a clot.
more or less directly on it, as long as it's enough to pull up that blood flow.
Exactly.
I just recently did a refresher for work as well, so it's good timing too, probably.
Perfect. Yeah. Well, I'm a bit of a prepper in that sense. Like I've had quite a few of these. You know, they don't. They always end well. They've all so far, thank God, they've always ended well.
Everyone's,
we're remote.
I think we're like, okay, it's going to be sharks,
Yeah.
or it's going to be shallow water blackhead, and it's like, no, it's probably the more predictable shit.
Absolutely.
It is the knife wound, because it's what and it's a little bit like we laugh at police and stuff, like particularly in the US. Well, maybe not at the moment. It's not a funny subject, but you know. Like they carry holstered weapons, and they're the ones that shoot themselves all the time. And I mean, but like if there's 100,000 people handling firearms every day, a percentage of them are going to have accidents.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I guess it's the same with us with dive knives. There's however many thousand of us these days, and we're all handling at least one or two knives on us. Definitely. And every Spearo's got at least a knife.
Definitely.
And you've got a big struggling fish. It's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing is understanding where like reading the fish after you've shot it. A lot of the time you can see how fresh that fish is. Where if it's still, with a Spanish mackerel, again, they can come to life in that. A lot of fish can come to life in that top 2 meters of water. You can sometimes stone a fish, get it you touch your hand on the spear and they're gone. And that'll happen. But if your flopper's engaged, you've got tension on it, there's nothing wrong with letting it sit there and kick a little bit longer.
Take some energy.
If anything,
have
it's
another
only
3 or 4 minutes.
Yeah. If anything, it's only going to bring in some more fish for the rest of the boys.
I remember that though. Like with the first 10 Spanish, I think I lost because I tried to put too much pressure on.
That was me today.
And,
I did the exact same thing today. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So walk us through it.
Yeah. So actually, I had two good opportunities on some big Spanish. Around that 25 to 30, I'd say.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I've bent 2 spears over. Two spears over there. I got to go straighten. First time we just had one come straight in on us.
Buy Drino spears next time, man.
I know.
They don't bend,
I should have. I should have listened to myself.
Anyway, sorry, that was just a cheeky aside.
It was just literally we're doing a drift out in about 16 meters of water. Started my duck dive, and half the time through my dive, my eyes are closed, so I'm tucked into my streamline position, and I've gone to level out, look up, Spanish mackerel to my left. He's by the time I've looked at him, he's already veering off, pretty sharp to my left hand side.
Yep.
So I knew if I swung my gun
to the right,
to the left, straight towards him, I knew that was going to spook him.
Yeah.
So as I'm leveling out, I'm angling my fins so that I'm turning back around to the right. So effectively, I'm turning my back on the fish and veering completely away in the opposite direction until I get to the point where it's going to circle around.
Why do they circle around?
They're just so inquisitive.
Yeah.
So inquisitive.
Yeah. It's one of those hardest things to do, though, isn't it?
Oh, well.
Because you want to chase it and follow it, but it's the opposite thing to what you actually need to do to get the fish to turn on you.
Exactly.
But, I learned that lesson over and over again. But anyway,
I learned it again today.
Yeah.
On the second fish, sorry.
Yeah.
It was. So I've turned around. It swam straight through. I've just held my gun out and waited for it to swim right into range. Pulled that trigger, and it was a pretty nice shot in, again, just above that pectoral,
Can't believe
in that
you lost
shoulder.
it.
Oh man,
Can't believe it.
Yeah, it's
just seems like a Instagram photo waiting to happen.
Oh, I already had it on the dinner plate. It was ready to go. You know,
they're the worst
head.
ones.
Exactly. Yeah.
You're already thinking, okay, I'm going to hold.
How am I going to hold
deck.
this? Yeah.
And before you pull the trigger, and then it will, you just bugger it up somewhere.
Yeah. All I was thinking was your face when I turned up with a mackerel as long as me.
Yeah.
Like, that's all I was thinking. And we came up with peanuts. So.
Yeah.
But
So
yeah.
you've put pressure on, you've shot him, good holding shot, and try to pull it up too fast.
Well, yeah, because I was using a reel and a float line, so typically I just use reels.
Reel.
Um,
So you have it
and-
locked off.
Yeah, well, yeah, I had it locked off, but I usually like to have it locked off for
Yeah.
at least the first run.
So you were talking about that.
yeah.
Well, let's get there in a sec. But so you
Absolutely.
had it locked off, and then what have you done?
So I locked it off, and I knew that it was pulling fish, pulling line, and I knew it was a pretty good shot. So being in 16 meters of water, just slowly made my way to the surface. That was my focus. Halfway up, I used a rifle reel, so they've just got a really easy lever action drag. So I clicked that back effectively into free spool.
Yep.
And then I just hold my hand against the side of that spool and put that little bit of tension on it.
Yep.
Once I hit the surface, I always focus on my rescue breaths, get a few breaths into me, make sure that at least someone knows what's happening.
Yep.
I've pulled the trigger, I've had a fish on. So one of the boys, he's seen me, and by that point, I've already been pulled 20 meters away from him.
I love that.
Oh, yeah, it was good fun. And it's been a long time since I've heard that spool just peeling line,
Yeah,
exactly.
just through your hand and it's burning. Oh, it's a great feeling,
But yeah, so I'm swimming, I'm ducking under float lines because we're out here on these liverboards. You have to use a float line. So
Yeah.
I'm ducking over under float lines. I've already at this point there's already 20 meters of reel line out. Thinking that it was a good shot. Hand over fist, pulling it up, kicking, following it down current, but chasing after it and putting some big yards on it. And then I'm looking for my dive buddies for a second shot. For me, I just want to get that fish in the boat. I'm not too stressed about a second shot.
Oh, man, put it in. I don't care. No.
Yeah.
It's funny when, records and comp dudes seem to have a thing with it, but
Absolutely.
for me, I never care about it.
No, not at all.
If I have any doubts, boom, shoot it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, at the end of the day, you're just wasting time as well. At the end and you can break gear. I bent my spears today, putting too much pressure on them. So, yeah, if you can make it easier on yourself, why not? But yeah, so I'm looking around. No one's. I had one of the boys probably about 20 meters to my left. Still, I'm hand over fist. I look at him. I ask for a second shot. Look at the spear. Oh no, it's a pretty good shot. Don't stress.
Pretzel, though.
Pretzeled, yeah, it was pretty bent. But the flop, I couldn't see the flop. The flop was on the other side.
Yep.
There was not a big tear, so I thought it was perfect. So I pulled it up, got it to probably within about two handfuls until I got to my spear. One big kick, and it's just pulled straight through. So I've just seen at that point the flopper's just torn straight back through. And so I must have just put a bit too much tension on it, and mackerel being that bit softer flesh, it's just torn down to its belly, and then just pulled through that belly flap. So
It's hard not to.
It's disappointing. That's probably a dead fish, which is, again, that's a disappointment.
Yeah,
Shot a fish for no reason, but
But it doesn't sound like that was avoidable.
I probably could have let it spool.
Yeah.
That was 50 meters of line on my reel.
How long
float line.
was that whole play? So from shooting it to getting it within 2 hand lengths of you?
Feels like 20 seconds,
But that's too fast for a fish that big.
Well, no,
isn't
it feels like 20 seconds, but
Oh.
we're probably talking. It'd be 3 minutes or so,
Yeah.
3-4 minutes. So
Yeah. What do you reckon though for a fish like that? What's a good like even when
hindsight,
you got
I should have just let him spool. There's
yeah.
no.
And
There's
then
no
how long
rush.
would the fight have gone if you'd let him spool?
Probably double that effectively.
Yeah.
He probably at that point, once I'd pulled him up, I was pulling him up. He was below me, so he effectively stopped. He had a few tiny little kicks. They were consistent. They were beating, but they weren't. They weren't a big consistent bang, 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 bang. They were bang, bang, bang. So look, even if that point, if I'd slowed down and let him run for another 2 or 3 minutes, 2 minutes or so.
Hindsight's 20/20.
Oh, absolutely.
Are you listening into this podcast thinking about your neglected spear guns down in the shed? But if you're like me, go to neptonics.com, buy yourself some new rubber, some new rigging, get your spear gun tip-top so that you're ready when that fishing trip comes around the corner. You get the random phone call, we've got a weather window, the fish are running, let's get into it. Neptonics.com. To sweeten it up, use the code NOOB10 to save 10% off store-wide at neptonics.com. Get those spear guns sorted, don't be like Shrek. if you'd let it free spool, right, you're giving it that extra 3 minutes. How much do you think that would have upped your percentage chance of landing that fish?
Well, that's where, I don't know, like
It's a very...
It can
it's,
go
it's
either
not
way.
a science,
No.
this, is it?
I've seen a lot of people who don't put enough tension on Spanish and things like that. And if they turn that broadside, that it takes tension off that flopper.
And then it comes on with a rip.
Or the flopper closes and you pull straight through. And you'll get back and you'll have nothing on your flopper.
Yeah.
What's happened here? And that's usually the spear's actually gone another 100 mil through the fish.
One of the
kicked, closed the flopper.
Is that one of the big arguments for using reel guns on Spanish? Because you can determine how much tension you put on them. Because with a float line, you can also do it, but
absolutely.
But between sort of, sometimes you shoot and you don't grab your float line in time. So do you think you should hold on to your gun until you got control of your float line before you let it?
I do, but that's I'm very much used to using my reel.
Yeah.
So my kind of train of thought when I've shot a fish, particularly at depth, I take the shot, make sure that fish, if it's running, that it's out of the reef, no matter at what depth it is. So I'll shoot. Usually my gun will be chucked behind me. I've already grabbed towards the muzzle and I'm already onto the Dyneema. And I'm holding that tension there.
Yeah.
Just trying to direct that fish. And I really like to shoot fish when they're kind of either broadside or quartering away.
Yep.
Because you can really control their angle. You can control the way they're running.
Yeah. Broadside can be a prick because you can pretzel easy.
Yes.
If you get them quartering away, even just a little bit, and you got a little bit of angle, it seems to just... You don't have to put as much energy, and the way the tension comes on the shaft, it's a bit nicer. But
especially on stainless spears.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So even with this new hardened stainless, you still think it's softer than our usual what is the steel the spring steel?
Your spring steel is harder effectively, but the character of it is it's a lot it's got a lot more flex to it.
Yeah.
So when you're putting a lot of power into those spears, you'll see a lot if you slow your GoPro down. Especially in 160, 170, 180 centimeter shafts. When you're using a spring steel, you can see if they're overpowered, they flex out of the muzzle.
Oh yeah.
So if you slow your GoPro footage down, sometimes if you've got new rubbers in particular, you'll see as soon as it shoots, that spear can be facing 10 degrees away. Like out of control, kind of just. And so it's getting that wobble effect coming out and can make it pretty inaccurate.
Is this what people commonly call whip?
Yeah, your shaft whip.
Because
So
it's more of a flex though factor.
Yeah, well, it's the characteristics of that material. And so that's the benefit of going to that stainless. Your stainless is a lot harder. It's a lot stiffer, really. So when you're pulling that trigger, you don't get as much of that. But then when you put a lot of tension on them, they bend.
Yeah, right.
But at least with stainless, like I've bent that spear back. It's within a couple of mil.
How do you make sure a shaft is straight while we're there?
In the water or?
Nah.
Oh,
both.
Oh, well, in the water.
So it's just line of sight in the water. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, look down.
Your Captain Cook navigation shit.
Exactly.
And Crocodile Dundee stuff too, by the looks of it.
Works every time, mate.
And then what about out of the water? How do you properly zero it in to make sure you're good?
I usually just roll it on a table.
Yep.
Keep that flopper on the overhang on the table.
Yep.
Roll it, and you'll see exactly where the bend is. And then from there you can.
And so stainless, you can bend back into shape a little bit.
Yeah. Just
with small bends.
Small bends, yeah. You can bring it back. It'll typically always have a bit of a kink there.
Yeah.
But you'll be able to use it that day. Like if you did a local trip and you didn't want to take a spare spear with a stainless, like you are definitely risking it, but you can definitely make it work. Like that one there's actually really came out really good, so it'll be sweet, I think.
So that's interesting. Anyway, talking about the characteristics of different steel, it's a good conversation to have.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But like, there's some people who are freaks with their steel, being able to straighten them. They know exactly where that kink is, and using a hammer, they can just hit it in the right pressure point, bang it, and it's straight.
Yeah, righto.
Yeah. Whereas for me, putting it on the ground and bending it at that point and hoping that
At
it
least
comes
you
back.
bend it yourself. I just take it around to my mate Matt's and go, "Hey Matt, bro," and he just looks at me and goes, "Well, you're a loser."
What have you done here?
Like I've got better over the years, but I would definitely still not call myself a gear dude. Like, but again, I think that's one of the benefits of working in a shop. You just you don't have any choice, and you enjoy sort of geeking out on it. And I think there's the element to that with a lot of things you do. The more you kind of do of it, the more you sort of think about it, and get smart about how you do it as well.
Yeah, there's definitely ways you can do. There's always a way you can do something better. It's really cool. Like meeting people like Rob Allen and his whole brand ethos. Understanding that everything he wants to do is.
Walk us through that. So you met him over in WA because were you managing the store over there?
Yeah, so I moved over there in must have been 2018, I think.
Yeah, holy moly, you're getting old, bro.
2018, 2017 or something, not too long ago. But went over there and opened up the Adreno store over there. So it was a great experience just to get over there. Yeah, meet a lot of the locals and do a lot of diving over that way. I had some friends over there anyway, so it was a pretty easy move. Yeah, and then we were lucky that Rob Allen had a bit of time to stop over on his way back. He was visiting the east coast of Australia. Yep. And so he came over and spent a bit of time, spent a night in the shop. Yep. And I just picked his brain. Like, Rob Allen's Rob Allen, Yeah, it's pretty cool to meet a bloke like that who's been in the game for so long and he's proper geeked out on his gear and made sure that every single thing his
YouTube channel lacks all. Like if you're a cinematographer and you're looking at Rob Allen's channel for like clever camera angles and shit, you're going to be really disappointed. But if you're going there to geek out on spearfishing gear, you're going to be infinitely satisfied. Yeah, absolutely. Like there's heaps of gear stuff on there. It's good.
Well, it's exciting to see what's going to come out from those guys. He's been making his playing with his triggers and changing different things in his mechs and making them better and better over the last few years. Yeah.
You were talking about like trigger pressure and stuff like.
Yeah, he's done every single test under the sun. It's it's for someone who understands their guns in and out, and is able to show you the tests. It was super cool. Yeah, and really, it was cool to see someone who's custom built rigs to test all of this. Test mech loads, test how much it takes to pull triggers. Yeah. It's cool.
It's time and but it's also diligence and it's attention and detail.
Just passion.
Yeah.
That's all. He's still a frother.
Yeah. It's awesome to see how the old bloke's still frothing. Definitely. And actually, like Wayne, who got injured today, he's an old frother too. Like he's 65.
King of the frothers, mate.
And he's and he 65? Loves it. Yeah, 65.
I thought he's. I don't know.
He's 65. 65, Wayne.
Giving him 10 years, mate. He won't be happy.
We'll give him another 10 years. It's all good. Before we get to Veterans Vault, I just looked at that mono over there and I had a thought. The mono shooting line argument or discussion.
Dyneema.
Yeah. What are you doing these days?
I drift between the two, depending. I know.
No one does that.
I was very much a naysayer at the beginning just because of the memory of a lot of it. Yeah. Like, you get a lot of tangles and...
Pain in the ass. You got to swim it out all the time and...
Yeah, but you can get really big braking strains out of really thin diameters, which is pretty cool. So on roller guns, talking to people like Manuel Bova, about how much the friction slows down spears. So using a bit of that, thinking in that sense, I've been using a 1.5 mil Dyneema. Yep. And splicing it onto a lot of my guns. Yep. So you're keeping all the strength of the line. There's no fail points if you do it properly. Yeah. And just looks super, super clean. So been doing that on roller guns. On my my rifle, I'll just use mono typically. Yeah, righto. But
do you have a mono preference? Because I was using this Jinkai stuff the other day on one of my guns. My mate actually rigged it up for me, and I was like, "This stuff is the shit."
Like the clear stuff that has like a blue tinge to it.
Yep. And it was like super strong, but the diameter's not too thick, and like the braking strain on it was ridiculous compared to like what the diameter is, you think.
What was it, like 1.8?
Yeah, it was 1.8, but it was
Yep.
like, I think it might have been, like, it was unbelievable. It might have been 500 pound or.
Yeah, wow.
It was good, and it was like, I don't know, it's just it felt really nice to run through even for the first time without memory and stuff, and I was just like, it just feels good, like it just like the material itself.
Well, it's good for like for me. Like what I do on my raft, because with mono it can pinch in max, things like that, so you get wear points in a lot of spaces. So if, right where you rig it into a lot of people rig the mono into the rear of the spear.
Yep.
That going in and out of your mech, you can get some wear points. So a lot of people forget to check that.
Do you file your mech so that
For my raft,
so you get less
I'll usually run Dyneema through it, through the back. So I'll have a closed loop of Dyneema into the spear, and then I'll crimp my mono to that.
Oh yeah, wow.
Yeah.
How far up?
Not far at all. It's literally probably, I don't know, let's say it's a loop, but it's 50 mil long.
Oh yeah. Fish on out here.
Yeah, they're on. Hopefully a red for dinner. But so I've been doing that. I really like the memory and how easy it is to use mono, especially. But you can the braking strain. If
you can get reefed.
Well, if you have a pretty solid fish and it runs straight into the reef and you've got a fair bit of tension on it, especially up here on this coral stuff, it's super sharp. It'll just cut straight through it.
Yeah.
Look, that could definitely be said the same for Dyneema. I don't think there's two of one and half.
This is a good discussion to have.
Absolutely,
It's funny to chat with someone that knows both and goes both, because generally people are very fixed.
Yep.
And like I felt prehistoric because all these dudes are saying, no, you've got to go Dyneema, and I'm just like stuck in my ways of mono. But I don't know.
Yeah, there's just like for me, I literally went Dyneema because I really like the splicing. Like that's what I really liked.
Yeah, you like knots and geeking out on that shit too. So you got a couple of vids coming up, I believe, for the Adreno YouTube channel, maybe.
Yeah, we're hoping to try and do some on this trip, I suppose.
Yeah,
good
cool.
Good to do a little bit more. Like, yeah, it's just I enjoy that side of it.
Yeah,
that's one of the best things I like about my job is talking to, or just people who haven't dived that much, or just getting into the sport who are absolutely frothing, but just don't know what they need to be looking at. I'm trying to point them in the right direction a little bit, You
just like talking to frothers.
Yeah,
whether it's people that have been brand new or people that are obsessed about rigging and shit.
Yeah.
You just love frothing on stuff.
Yeah, because it's
contagious as well.
Yeah, exactly. That's the whole thing. It's contagious.
Energy, yeah.
Whether like you were saying before, there's Wayne Judge, king of the frothers. I know Ant Bostock in WA. He's one of he just absolutely loves diving. It's in his blood.
One thing you can probably say to new guys too, like if you're heading out with experienced guys and you're worried about I'm not going to be diving up to their expectations or whatever. If you froth on what you're doing and you don't complain and you just muck in, I think people are just happy to have you around.
100%.
So unless they're dickheads, and then find a new crew anyway. But which there are people like that. I don't know. Yeah. I remember going out on one boat with these guys and they were really good, and I wasn't. And these dudes didn't even really talk to me on the way out. It's all the way out to Morton. You're out there for an hour and a bit. And then we were diving for a while, and this guy hadn't even really looked at me or acknowledged me, and I was like, oh, I don't know what I've done wrong here. But then he shot a fish, and he lost it, but it was right on the sand there. But it was in like 21 or 22 metres, and I've just dropped straight down on it, managed to put a shot in it for him and bring it up for him. And then after that, I was his best mate, and he was pissing in my pocket. But it's just funny. Some of the boats and cruise you
Did you take the fish home in the end?
No, I gave it to him. I won myself a friend there.
Yeah.
And for me, I don't know why you can't just be good to people who, I don't know. There's I guess with new jobs and stuff, it's the same sometimes.
Yeah, definitely.
There's some people just have a little bit of a cold. They're cold initially. I guess it's the same with spearing and new crews and stuff as well. But
definitely. Takes a while just to get to know people, I suppose. Break down those walls.
Yeah, for sure. Equalizing, breath hold, relaxing, taking on depth. There's a ton of struggles every Spearo encounters. Every single person that does spearfishing has an obstacle. They have something that they're working on. They're always trying to get better. For me, At the moment, it's marksmanship. It's improving my aim. I don't like wounding fish. But if you are looking at the freediving side of things, you have either equalizing issues, you want to extend your breath hold, you have trouble relaxing, you don't know how to take on depth. These are very common, and Ted Hardy from Immersion Freediving has put together a whole bunch of offerings for you. Check it out, noospearo.com/Ted. There's a whole bunch of these online courses that can be studied at your own pace from your phone if you like, and you can overcome your struggles. Just check it out, noospearo.com/Ted. Have you ever wanted to slay fish with a weapon of your own creation? Good news for you, episode 123 of the Noob Spearo podcast with Ed Martin from Killshot Spearguns lays out the pattern and the plan to help you build your own weapon of death and lay waste to fish with something with your own maker's stamp on it. And along with that, go to today's major sponsor website, neptonics.com. Go to the Speargun Builder page and select your components to build that magical weapon, and use the code NOOB10 to save a further 10% off on anything in your shopping basket. So visit neptonics.com, use the code NOOB10 to save 10% off store-wide. Veteran's fault. So thinking systematically through a full dive and being intentional about sort of all the sort of steps of the process. We were chatting about it last night. I was really intrigued by the idea. It sounds like an experiment that you're running. What is the theory of this, and where did the inspiration come for thinking like this about doing diving or a dive?
So I started getting to a point where I was diving quite deep, 20 to 30 meters, and just really wanting to be comfortable there. I've had mates pass away from blackouts and things like that, so wanting to understand what's going on, what I can do to make sure that I'm not going to put myself in that position. So that was a big thing for me. I wasn't really ever interested in going to the pool and trying to train or trying to really...
Oh, that really tight focus at working in a swimming pool. You like?
Yeah, I very much like, for me, like everyone, time is precious.
Yeah.
And so it's hard to make time to go to the pool. It's hard to really go and focus on that stuff. So,
So
I've definitely done my time I've done some time in the pool, and definitely done a lot of time training with it. And I was working with Lucas Hanley, he's a good friend of mine.
Yeah.
From the Underwater Academy in Sydney. And so, started working with him, and it was a bit of a light bulb moment for me to actually understand. He put in a really simple term that freediving is like a dance.
Yeah.
And so there's steps to it. So that's when I started really just drilling down what is happening, what I'm doing actually throughout the dive, and where I need to be, what I need to focus on.
So not like a dance like you're used to, like at the beat or whatever.
No.
This is more of a like a...
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. More like, you've got your steps, and you stick to them, and yeah.
Okay, cool. So, and the benefits, I think you were talking about earlier, like if you can get that first 10 meters right, and the bit before then, that's sort of that first part of the dive, you maximize your time down as well, I think.
Definitely. Well, yeah. So for me, a big thing was that I get contractions really early, especially towards the end of the day of diving or after a few big days of diving. So I just really like to try and distract myself as well. So I used to rap songs in my head. So that was what I did. Like I just focused on, I'd sing Express Yourself by NWA. Okay. And that was it, just because it was super funky. I could just dive and focus on that.
Yeah.
But then I realised I'd get to the same point and I'd hit the surf. I'd have to come up. So whether it was in 6 meters or 30 meters, it didn't really matter too much.
Yep.
So
you got to the chorus and you were done.
Yeah, somewhere along those lines.
Yeah.
And I kind of just knew that was a mental barrier for me. Mm-hmm. So I started looking in a different way, and as far as steps, because that step might take different timing throughout the whole dive. Effectively I looked at it. So when I'm on the surface, I'm doing tidal breathing. I've always made sure that if I've done my previous dive was a minute 10, times that by 3.5 minutes. From there, I'm going to start looking at, what's my heart rate doing? How comfortable am I feeling? And then from there, I'm ready to start getting ready to dive. tidal breathing's coming, I'm equalizing, I'm making sure I'm pretty comfortable, closing my eyes, just really trying to slow that heart rate down.
Do you do a muscle tension thing as well?
Not so much, no. Is that like a muscle check, you're thinking?
I mean, like there's that Headspace app. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but one of the things they do to get you sort of present is to sort of really think consciously about your breathing and then your body and releasing muscle tension. And I've heard other freedivers talk about it too. It's like Emmanuel Bobo, I mean, you were mentioning him before. Like he said it's almost like you want to be asleep on the surface before you dive, and that's the like if you want to dive longer and be on the bottom for longer, that's the level of relaxation you want to try and attain. And so some people try and like they almost go like head to toe, consciously releasing tension, and then. So I've heard it talked about. I was just wondering if you had something similar.
Yeah, not so much because I think it can be hard. Especially spearfishing, you've got current. You've got a gun in one hand. You're trying to find somewhere that you want to drop onto. You're not just trying to just dive and one after the other. You want to be kind of diving for a specific reason. You're seeing a bombie come up or a little bit of a crack that you're interested in looking at. So, not so much. I definitely close my eyes. And if I'm doing deeper diving, like I'll even be even lazier and I'll get a rooster float and put it under my chest.
Yep.
And that way I don't have to kick. I can just close my eyes and I can just focus on breathing and my heart rate. So I'll still have my eyes closed. I've definitely tried different techniques like that.
Yeah.
Wayne talks about that a lot. But yeah, not so much for me.
Okay.
So I'll just start doing my tidal breathing. Once I start, I'm pretty well ready to dive. I'll start doing a big belly breath. So I'm feeling that belly, pretty much to the point where there's all tension in my belly. Then I'll fill that last bit of my chest. And then once I have that, I'm reaching up, equalizing, and in that same motion, bringing my hand down, which then spits my snorkel. My left hand goes up above my head. My right hand's on the middle of my gun. That's the middle. My right hand is pretty well effectively driving my direction down.
Yep.
And with my left hand above me, I'll then do one big pull, like a breaststroke, effectively.
Yep.
Once that's down around my waist, that's then slowly coming up, nice and streamlined up my belly, until I've got it on my chin. And I always like to make sure, like I can hands-free equalize, but I really like to make sure that I'm getting a lot of equalize in that top 10 meters.
Okay.
So I might equalize 10 times in 10 meters or more, depending on what the pressure's feeling. And then, like what Lucas said to me was that, that top 10 meters is where you're your most buoyant. So you really want to make sure you're efficient. And your duck dive can get you to 5-6 meters, 10 meters if you're really, really good at it. So that's where always working on your duck dive, making sure that's efficient. We'll usually count to about 8 really nice, strong kicks. And at that point, I should be between 10 to 15 meters. And that's when you're really starting to enter, hopefully, free fall, if you're weighted correctly. At those points, if you're diving in 15 meters of water, you've got 6 kicks. My eyes are closed really most of that time on the drop. I'll start to level out. My biggest focus when spearfishing is getting to the bottom. I think I've had a lot more success. As soon as I hit the bottom, you tend to relax a lot more. You're not holding as much tension in your body.
Yeah.
It's an easy one to start focusing on other things, whereas when you're in that drop, you can be focusing on, I need to, what's coming up? Am I going to hit the bottom? Do I need to open my eye? What am I looking for? And you never really want to, as soon as you start lifting your jaw up, you're breaking your streamline, you're not being efficient. So just making sure it's as easy for your body as possible. And if you're doing big jolting movements, looking up, around, at depth, you can get trachea squeezes, things like that, which I definitely don't want.
With your
Yeah. So, but yeah, once I hit the bottom, I'll always still have my gun in my right hand, halfway up the gun, hit the bottom. At that point, start throwing maybe a bit of sand, depending on what I'm trying to chase. And then at that point, you're starting to look at what's around. And I think definitely a big thing is just you don't need, every dive doesn't need to be
Your max.
a minute 45.
Yeah.
A minute 30. Like whatever your max is, it doesn't need to be that.
Yeah.
You need to be, like I was saying before, pretty intentional with your diving.
Yeah.
You know, if you see fish around that you think you're interested in taking, yeah, okay, maybe look at if you think they're looking interested with a bit of bottom time, or maybe with some coaxing, you can get them in, have a crack. But if not, if they're 15 meters away, go back, hit the surface.
I was chatting with this dude in recent interviews, and he was talking about a cone of death.
Okay.
So one thing he was talking about though, he looks up like maybe 15 meters off the bottom.
Yep.
And he looks around, and he thinks that if he can't get to the bottom and be within 15 meters of whatever his target is, then he'll abandon the dive and just come back up and then reposition himself so he's more. But with, the realities of current and all the rest of it, and sometimes you can coax a fish in, and if it's 15 meters away on the bottom, sometimes if you haven't gone down 35 meters, then maybe it's reasonable to fin over to it. But
definitely.
I thought that was interesting.
Absolutely.
But you hear experienced guys talking about that. But I think a lot of people, when they first start getting down to 20, 25 meters, they think, I'm already here. I'm going to spend as long down here as I can. It's a little mental trap, I think.
Definitely. Yeah, I really like that idea. Interesting.
It was a cool little mental heuristic, I think, just for planning and thinking about dives.
For sure. But I think it's the reality of a lot of people is, for people, if they don't have their own boat, they don't really know where they're going to go diving. You don't have that luxury of, this rock's coming up, I'm looking forward to, this is this spot, okay, on this edge I know there's going to be, some big mangrove jacks or something. So effectively, a lot of people are diving and they're scouting a lot of the time. Every time they go out, they're diving new spots and scouting. So
do you do that? Do you do scouting dives?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so
I love to do scouting.
So how does the scouting dive work?
Oh, scouting dive as far as throughout, yeah. So most of the time I'll literally just be doing that. I'll dive, hit the bottom, have a look around, and that's really it. Hit the bottom, have a look around. If I think I see something that's interesting, I'm going to stick around.
Because the other side of it is, it's like, okay, you've done a minute 45 dive. That means you're up on the surface for another 5 minutes 30
Definitely.
or whatever.
Yeah.
That's 8 minutes of your dive day done,
Yep.
and effectively you haven't spent. You haven't shot a fish.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a little bit of an economy sort of thing there.
Definitely.
Like a competition diver would just look at you and go,
Oh, they'd be
devastated. Yeah. But if you're really out to just shoot 1 or 2 special fish a day, or more, maybe it's 4 or 5 special fish a day.
Yep.
But I think it's maybe a good discipline to think about.
Absolutely. And you don't you definitely want to make sure that when you do see a good fish, that you've got the legs to go the distance. If you've been doing pretty solid diving, your minute 30s, minute 45s all day, and then you see that big mangrove jack, that big coronation trout, just at the edge of viz, just starting to come in, and you're very uncomfortable at that point. You'd be disappointed. You'd done.
You've used your best dives.
Yeah, onto sand.
Yeah.
On the edge of.
So you're almost saying save your best performances for the best moments.
For sure. I really like to do that for sure.
Yeah, right.
You definitely still need to hit the bottom. I think at that point you'll always relax. You'll always have a pretty nice dive anyway. And you're definitely going to increase the chances of seeing the fish. I think it's a lot harder to see fish from above. So for me, even if you're 5 meters from the bottom,
boys are on with something.
Yeah,
out the
I think so.
Yeah.
Hopefully some reds.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's really hard to spot fish from above, and it's even harder to shoot fish from above.
Yeah.
So even if you're sitting at 15 meters, but it's a 20 meter spot, it's pretty hard to see the fish. And that is still good to see ground.
Some fish, I think, are vulnerable to that top-down predation, and that's why people fall into this habit, like parrot and stuff like that.
Yep.
Dive bombing them and spanking them from on top makes sense a lot of the time, because they don't see you. It's like a blind spot for them. Whereas when you're on a level, they're actually a real prick of a fish to get close to.
Definitely.
So I think that's part of the reason why people fall into that habit. And the other thing is as well, if you've dived all the way to the bottom and then you get there and then you go, oh, the fish is 10 meters or that way.
Yeah.
I've got to go up now. Then you think, oh, I'll look up next time.
Yep.
And then I'll make sure I'm in the right spot before I go down. And it's a little bit of a trap there.
Well, that's where I think I really, a lot of the time as well, is hit that bottom and keep your eyes down or keep your eyes closed. Nestle in, sit into the reef, grab a hold of the reef with your left hand, your non-gun holding hand. Hold the reef there. Keep your neck, everything relaxed. Maybe that start thinking about your muscles and holding tension, where you're holding tension.
Yeah.
And if you're thinking about that and relaxing a fair bit, even for 10 seconds, that's that bit of time where you look up. If there's fish coming your way, okay, cool, we're on here. Yeah.
It's an interesting thought. What about, the other side of it is, so you've done one of your Herculean type dives, right? You're sitting there at 2 minutes 5 or whatever, and I'm not for every diver they've got a different limit, right? So whatever the number is, I'm not trying to chuck out at some number. Maybe it's a minute for you, whatever. You're in 80 meters of water and you've been down there for a minute, and for you that's a huge dive. You look up at the surface and it's a long way to go. What is your process like with your buddies and stuff when you're coming up from a longer dive for you?
So yeah, look, obviously I like shooting on reel guns a lot. Different depths call for different measures. But on the deeper stuff, especially when there's been either a fish shot or something, or you've started pushing that limit. For me, it's always making sure that you're thinking about technique on the way up.
So you're finning cadence,
finning cadence. You're not looking at the surface even. You're not lifting that throat. You're not giving yourself that room to have a squeeze. Yeah. You're focusing on keeping technique properly, keeping a nice straight knee in your kick. Yeah.
What about the massive contractions and you just, maybe there's a little element of panic setting in or anything like that? Is there anything you do in those situations?
I think there's a lot of things for me, throughout my dive,
I can see you getting uncomfortable. It's like you channeled that there for a minute, because I think we've all been there, and it's like, you know what I mean? Like, there is some gymnastics we go through in our minds, I think.
Oh, definitely. And I think it happens on the way down as well.
Yeah.
And I think it's embracing a lot of it to an extent.
Yeah.
So for me, I know what my symptoms of CO2 buildup is,
Yeah.
So I get hot in the face. I get the urge to swallow, and a lot of people just fight that. And same with contractions, you're fighting it. But I think you just need to ride through it.
Yeah.
If your body says you need to swallow, then maybe swallow on the way up, just to get through it. If you need to open your mouth on the way up, open your mouth. Just kind of embrace whatever your body's doing, wanting to do, and just focus on that technique.
Okay.
For me, on those bigger dives, my buddies know we're all pretty in tune with what each other's diving capabilities are. So if we're coming on the way up, I know what my best mate's technique is of his finning. I know what he looks like when he comes up, because I've seen him do it 80 times a day for the last 50 times a year for the last 5 years. So if I see him start to slow his kicking down, he might be super comfortable, but in my head, he's changed something. He's done something completely different. So I'm meeting him, even if I see it at 10 meters, if I see it at 5 meters, I'm on to that.
Yeah.
That's the big thing there. But for me, is focusing on technique, not focusing on looking at the surface. Yeah.
When you've got a dive buddy on the surface that you can really rely on to be there when you come up, does that give you a lot of peace of mind as well when you come into the relaxation side of things, when you're spinning a bit longer on the bottom and things like that?
Definitely.
Yeah?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's, well, you wouldn't want, absolutely. There's definitely, there's a sense of that, at the end of the day, any slip up like we found today, you can end up in a pretty bad shape. Yeah. So I'm pretty picky with who I dive with. Yeah. You know? If I see someone who's a bit of a cowboy and I don't really think they're going to be watching my back, I'll say that. I'll definitely bring it up with them, but
it's a cultural thing, though.
Definitely.
You and me were chatting yesterday about this. Like, some parts of the world, they don't really buddy dive, and sometimes I think they buddy dive, but they don't. And I do it too. Like, if I go to a shallow area and I'm with with dudes and we're all well within our comfortable operating depths, there is a temptation and there's a hunting practicality towards spreading out and sort of, do you know what I mean?
Definitely.
But whenever you sort of start to hit depth, you really just want people around you can rely on, I think.
100%.
Yeah.
There's nothing worse than hitting the surface and seeing old mate Joe 50 metres away, and you know that you're within your limits, but you've had a big dive, and you've got the surface and he's not there.
Yeah.
Imagine if I'd shot that fish and got snagged up in 25 metres and put that little bit too much time into trying to fight that fish off the bottom. And it can happen so quick.
Yeah.
Like, I'm no athlete, and I know people a lot fitter than me who have done themselves a mischief in free diving, for sure.
I mean, I'm an athlete, so I'm on a different page to
Fighting
you.
weight, that's for sure.
What's your process with the buddies you've had for prolonged periods of time? When do you guys agree to just kind of separate and dive solo a little bit? Like what depths and situations? No, you're always together.
A lot of them,
You enjoy hunting together, even
Absolutely.
in the shallow stuff. Yeah.
That's even today. I said to Ryan, I've just started diving with this trip, and a prime example was an even bigger Spanish came in on me when I was chasing some squid.
Yeah.
And it was right at the end of my breath, and I turned around, wanted to swing my gun towards it, knew I'd spook it, hit the surface. He's 10 to 20 metres away. And I was like, that's a prime example that I've seen a lot of the time, especially Spanish. They're very inquisitive, and if that diver doesn't get an opportunity at the shot, that a lot of the time your buddy will.
Mm-hmm.
So you'll definitely. I find you shoot a lot more fish with the buddy, but it's also a team sport. Like, it's good fun. You're out there with your best mates, like.
Yeah, and making friends too.
Yeah,
and the high five moments, and there's heaps of shit like.
Absolutely.
Second shots, sharks. There's so many benefits to having a good buddy. This episode of the Spearo podcast is brought to you by spearfishing.com.au. Might as well check out some gear while you're thinking about spearing and get an idea of what you want to buy later on down the track. Everyone's looking to upgrade something, whether it's your speargun, your wetsuit, your float. It doesn't matter what it is. Head over to spearfishing.com.au. Fantastic reviews from a whole bunch of people just like you. People that love spearing. If you like, head into the stores. Brisbane, Melbourne, Sydney or Perth. There's 70 passionate team members that can give you some help, getting some idea about what to buy next. But the online shopping experience is fantastic too. And if you shop online, for every purchase over $200, if you use the code Spearo, you save $20. Thanks for supporting the Spearo podcast and shopping with spearfishing.com.au. Simple, accurate, deadly. Use the code NOOB, N-O-O-B, and save $30 on any speargun for a limited time only. Go to killshotspearguns.com, check them out for yourself. Handmade in the Florida Keys by Ed Martin. Use the code NOOB, N-O-O-B, or head into the shop and say, "Crikey, mate." And apparently Ed will hook you up with a $30 discount on any timber speargun. Get your hands on one. killshotspearguns.com. What do you do though when you've got an inexperienced buddy and they disrupt your hunting? Like, in terms they move clumsy on the surface and they're positioning themselves directly above you, and you might only be in, say, 30 feet of water, and they're spooking stuff, you know what I mean? Because a lot of those species, sometimes in that 10 metre stuff, it's like, oh, sweet, I can spend a ton of time down here and I can really, I can really pull the thread out of a fish and get it to come into me, but in order to do so, I need to spend a lot of time. But if there's someone on the surface above you, sometimes they can ruin those opportunities.
Yeah, no, they definitely can. Oh, yeah, it's a tough one. It's a tough one. Look, I'm sure I've probably spat the dummy at a few people, I'm sure, along the way. But, yeah, look, most of the time I just have that conversation with them. And I think a lot of the time is, like, I think there's things that can make, like, even for their success, you telling them,
you're doing them a favour anyway.
Absolutely.
And they appreciate it.
Yeah. Like little things, even for me, I make sure that through the duck dive is trying to make sure when you do your duck dive, not kicking too early so that you're flapping your blades on the surface, throwing water everywhere, making noise. You know, if I get water in my snorkel on the surface, I'll lift my head, empty my snorkel instead of doing that big drastic blowout. Like, just even teaching them things like that, and then go, And also stay about 10 metres away from me while I'm on the bottom, throwing sand, please, if you can.
Back.
Do these things and we'll be sweet.
Yeah.
But I also think a lot of the time, most fish are, unless you're chasing things like your pink snapper, job fish.
Are forgiving enough.
A lot of fish are forgiving enough,
yeah.
for sure.
I just like to blame my buddy.
Don't we all?
Yeah. Nah, I mean, is there anything else I think like you wanted to sort of add to thinking systematically about like a dive? Because we're still really in this Veterans Vault thing. I mean, we've been talking about dives really.
Yeah.
Is there anything else to it you think? And how would you advise other people? Like, would you even write it down, like your steps?
I think a big thing is to understand. Yeah, you can definitely write steps, and it could be effectively those steps that I was told was pretty much
triple your surface interval.
Yeah, and that's
get your tidal breathing. Do some equalizing. Relax. Let the tension go. Close your eyes.
Yeah.
Fill your stomach first, and then your chest last.
Yep.
And then that hand up to your to final equalize, and then pull the snorkel down.
Keep that elbow to your chest.
Yep. And then the other arm extends out like a breaststroke or a freestyle, like quite a big but efficient sort of stretch. And then you're pointing your gun where you want to go, and then you're doing one big pull. 6 to 8 big powerful sort of kicks once you get your fins beneath the water.
Yep.
And then starting to enter into a free fall by then, hopefully.
Yeah. By then you're getting that free fall, and then just having. You still need probably another 6 to 12 kicks, depending on the depth you're doing. But at least by then you're starting to slow them down. You're not engaging your quads as hard.
Yeah. So you're not getting that that big demand on your muscles. It's kind of you've set the tone. You've already done most of the hard work.
Exactly. You've done the hard yards already.
Yeah.
You're not doing slow, inefficient kicking, and you're just slowly fighting
when you're positively
that
buoyant.
Exactly. You're fighting that buoyancy the whole time. But a lot of that's just literally regurgitated from
that's fine.
people I've trained with, But I think the biggest thing that you can do for yourself, like every person can do, is actually understand their symptoms of CO2 buildup.
Yep.
Like for me, that was another light bulb moment of this is what happens roughly at you can do it doing statics at home. So practice your belly breathing. So a lot of people just do that breathe up and you'll see a lot of people just automatically that chest lifts up.
Yeah.
And
they're not doing like a 2 or 3 stage breath.
Yeah, they're not feeling that bottom of the belly, and then they're not going to feel that top.
Yeah.
So you're only feeling, let's say, 2/3 of your lung.
Yeah. So you're not taking as much fuel down as you could.
Exactly. So practice that on your bed, doing some statics, and then through your statics, just start to write down. You don't need to be doing 6-minute statics, but even just feeling that, okay, at 30 seconds, I'm getting hot flushes through the face.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So I know that's about 30 seconds. Okay. At about a minute, I'm getting tightness in my throat. Okay, I'm feeling that urge to swallow. All I can fucking think about is swallowing.
You can swear on this
Okay,
podcast.
cool.
It's free. It's an explicit podcast. It's thoroughly
should have told me at the beginning.
Nah, it's fine.
All I can think about is swallowing.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll swallow and see how that feels. And then
I'm going to cut that one part of the interview out,
Okay,
and that's going to be on a lot of internet videos. That's good. It's good, man. It's really good to hear your sort of thoughts about it. And it's still a bit of an experiment for you by the sounds of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
This isn't something you've mastered yet.
God, no.
This is something you're still working on.
I think most diving is exactly that. Like, every day is different.
Incremental improvement too, isn't it? A lot of it.
Yeah.
It can be quite frustrating too, I think, particularly when you're new and you're listening to some of the stuff and you think, 30 meters, yep, okay, that's me next year. And it's like, well, no, it was a journey for you.
Absolutely.
Even though, you had some good advances in the start, I'm sure there were some barriers you hit along the
Yeah,
way.
definitely. Well, there's a lot of, and I was told from over a very long time that you should only dive what your age is.
Yeah.
If you're 17, dive 17 meters. As actually people told me. I think that's more so just a
slow adaptation, just to encourage that.
Just to, exactly. Slowly, incrementally build up.
Somewhere
try and
along the
rush
way, you
into
broke
it.
the rules for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, mate, I'm pretty old.
Yeah, I've never broken that rule. I'm 38, so. No, it's good.
But yeah, no. So I don't even know where we're going there.
Nah, it's good thinking. I wanted to talk about some funny stuff. Segue out of it.
Absolutely, yeah.
What are some of the fun? What's maybe one of the funniest things you've experienced out spearing?
Funniest things I've seen out spearing. I've had a.
Is it a poo story?
Oh, poo story? No.
Oh no,
I
I just specialise in poo stories.
You do? I've definitely got a poo story.
My podcast,
for sure.
because I particularly find poo stories funny.
Okay.
So I think just like naturally guests want to share their poo stories with me, but it doesn't have to be a poo story.
Oh, I can show you a poo. I can share a poo story.
Oh no, day 2 of diving out here sounds terrible.
Yeah, okay, poo story. So, diving off North Stratty, and me and one of the boys were chasing mulloway, and we're in about 8 meters of water on a pretty common spot that we'd seen quite a few fish.
Right.
And I just said to him, I was like, "Hey mate, I'm just gonna go swim this way for a bit.
Yeah.
Don't come this way." And he took that as he's seen some fish over that way, so he let me swim off, and I've gone over and pulled my pants down, started doing my thing, and then next thing I know, he's coming straight over. He's swimming straight up the Burley Trail, effectively, and I'm like, no, and he swam straight through it.
It's through your poo.
Yeah.
Oh no.
No mulloway either. He wasn't too stoked.
Oh no.
So yeah, he thought he was following me to the mulloway hole of his dream, but no.
It was just yeah.
Yeah, leave that one there, mate.
Yeah, not every joke works. Cool, man. What about? I mean, like when you're talking to new guys in the shops, what's kind of like your 2-3 pieces of sort of go-to advice? Do you sort of listen to them and listen to where they're at before you give them advice, or do you just have
definitely, yeah?
Because everyone's kind of different, eh? Like some people, it's like I don't know, everyone sort of battles with different things.
Yeah, I think a lot of people definitely want to rush into it. My biggest advice is looking at what your budget is, and trying to get the best quality stuff you can within that budget.
I was just thinking about our first Spearguns.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's it. Like I bought from a fishing shop who didn't really have much of an idea of, I think, what they were pointing me in that direction, you know. It's
a good argument to go to a specialist spearfishing shop, isn't it?
I think so, definitely.
Yeah.
A lot of people have different opinions on different things.
And that's fine.
Absolutely.
One thing I like about that on the podcast is like everyone's got a different opinion, but I just try and get their opinion about it and find out why. Some dudes are a little bit like, oh, you just do this. And it's like, well, why? And they're like, no, you just do it. And it's like, well, okay, like I'm going to do it, but I'm going to break the rule because I don't understand why. Yeah. And I'm going to have to discover for myself because you're not explaining it to me.
And that's where, spearfishing, a lot of the stuff is quite anecdotal. It's a long way behind a lot of other sports, and the understanding of gear. You know, gear is evolving so much all the time. It definitely. Everyone has different opinions, and things that work for me, you know, you might absolutely hate. And it's really trying to understand effectively what people are trying to get out of their spearfishing. What type of fish are they hoping to shoot? Where they're diving, how often they're going to dive. And things like that. So I always ask people where they're diving, what they really want to be trying to get with their gun, their fins, what they're trying to do, and a lot of the time
it's situational by the sounds of it.
Absolutely, it's very situational.
What are 2 or 3 things people can do? Like they're in their first year of spearing.
Yep.
What are 2 or 3 things that people can do to dramatically sort of help them find success spearfishing?
One of the biggest things, I think, like for me, especially if people don't have access to a boat.
Yep.
Like Google Maps, Google Earth is one of the best free tools you'll ever find in your life.
Yep.
So that is one of the biggest things. Using that, having a look at different headlands, understanding what species you're wanting to find, and just going out there and having a look. So make a weekend of it. Like I did a lot of time camping on headlands, doing a dive here, doing a dive there, and just covering ground.
Yep.
And a lot of places you might not see the fish there, but you'll look at the reef and you'll start seeing structure. And everyone, once you start seeing structure, you'll really understand. Like if you see big boulders, and they out on the edge of a sand on a ledge, and they come from it's a 10 meters onto the sand, and it comes up to 4 meters on top.
Yep.
It's a pretty significant piece of rock.
Yep.
It might not hold fish now, but it'll probably hold fish at some point.
Yep.
So, okay, that's a spot for you to check at some point. It might not present today, tomorrow it might.
Yep.
So it's covering ground, being persistent. It's like I think we were talking last night about using almanacs and things like that. Like I was talking with Strico from Back to Basics, and same thing. We're both talking about that. And it's like you think you've got this one spot worked out. You think you've got the moon phase. You think about all of these things, and you turn up there the same day the next year, same moon phase, same wind, same tides. Nothing there. It's persistence in that case. And I think Google Maps at least narrows down a lot of it because you can see around headlands specifically, which is a lot of people where are shore diving, and you can shoot some fantastic fish shore diving. My best memories are shore diving. Most of them. So using that, I think that's a bang on one. Spend your Friday night having a few beers and looking at Google Earth.
Yeah, righto.
And that'll narrow down. No matter where you are in Australia, you'll be able to find a bit of structure at least off headlands.
What about learning species? So you went to WA. I mean,
yeah.
Have you dived outside of Australia much? Have you gone to areas where you're not that familiar with species before?
Yep.
What was your process for learning them?
Watching videos from those areas.
Yep.
So like I dove a little bit. I managed to get a dive in Florida a couple of years ago. But a lot of those species are iconic.
Yeah.
Your hogfish. Like
mutton snapper.
Yeah. Bang on accent, mate.
Yeah. No, I can do it. Sometimes I do it.
Diving New Zealand, watching snapper snooping, understanding what that is.
Yeah.
Same thing, and asking questions.
Yeah.
Like it's like we were talking last night. The same thing. It's especially as adults, a lot of people don't really want to be
perceived
authentic or I don't know what I'm doing here. What am I doing? Okay, snapper snooping. What does that mean? Asking those people those questions and listening to the locals, or just watching videos, getting a bit of an understanding of that technique in that area. It's pretty easy to find. In those, you'll learn species pretty quickly. And you'll also see their techniques. But as far as trying to find ground when you go overseas or something, that's a whole other question. Google Earth, same thing, which is tough.
I had 3 rapid fire questions for you, and then I'm thinking I'm going to end up talking with you again in the future about a few things because I don't think we've covered as much ground as we could have. But 3 faster questions. Who is one or a few of the most influential people that you've been around in your spearfishing? Like maybe made the biggest impact on you as a Spearo?
I'd probably say, like one of my best mates, Sam Cox.
Yep.
Like he was, for me, one of the first people I'd started diving with a lot. He's, for me, I've done some of my best diving with him.
Yep.
Super comfortable. We've been halves in boats, so that was probably my biggest barrier to entry, was buying a boat.
Yeah.
We went halves in a boat a couple of years ago, and so he was very influential. We've always picked each other's brains about gear, what we can do better, where we can aim. So he's probably one of the big ones. Yeah.
Okay, cool. What does this spearfishing experience mean to you? Because I talk to dudes too, and like you've spent a lot of time invested in spearing, and I think at one point you've been burnt out by it, and you've come back. What does it mean to you now?
Look, spearfishing is obviously the way I'm very lucky that I work for Adreno, and it's my whole lifestyle. I work in it. I do it on my days off. It's just, apart from a few other little hobbies I have on the side, it's just about everything else I've got, And it's something I've been doing it now. I've been diving for 11 or 12 years. I've been working in it for 8 years or so.
Yeah.
And it's something I want to do forever.
Yeah.
So for me, it's something I'm really passionate about. Whether it's, trying to develop new product, just trying to get other people into the sport and understanding why we do the sport. But it's also the food, like number one.
Yeah, we've been frothing about just chatting recipes. I mean, we had sashimi tonight.
Man. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we were spoiled, man. My last question, and it's probably not a shorter one. We started chatting about it off mic, and it's some of the exciting new products you have been working on. Is there one you wanted to sort of talk about that is about to come out or has come out? Or, I mean, what have you been really excited about in the past little bit of time?
Obviously, there's we're at Adreno's, we're always trying to look at new gear and developing new gear. And Sam Cox, like who I was talking about before, he designed salt suits.
Yeah.
So salt skin, and that's been something that we've kind of been kicking that ball around for a long time.
Yeah.
And it's just just a wetsuit that has a few little things in it built into it. It's just an absolute workhorse. Isn't pretty.
It's a black wetsuit. There's no camo on that thing. I was surprised. I was like,
it's just a really sleek, like, for me, really, really nice, clean wetsuit. Weight pockets on the shoulders.
Yep. What does that do?
Well, it's kind of like wearing a neck weight.
Yeah.
So a lot of freedivers do it, and for me, you see a lot of people when they duck dive and they continue their kicking, especially if they have their head up, they kick underneath themselves.
Yeah.
So they're actually, instead of doing a 17-meter dive, they're doing a 20-meter swim.
Yeah. Or 25.
Yeah.
I was just chatting about this too the other day. Like, there's the spirals, you see, the spiraling guys, and then there's the angle guys.
Yeah.
And it's like, I mean, if you're diving on a line or you've got some structure picked out or something, it seems to be much easier, but like a lot of us do it.
Absolutely.
So the weights help orient you?
I think so, yeah. Well, it's all up in your shoulders.
Yeah.
And also for me, it helps me kind of settle into the reef a little bit more as well.
Okay.
I like that.
The other thing I picked up about the suit is, like, it seems to have borrowed a fair bit of technology from some of the latest and greatest in surfing. And I mean, that's a hundreds of millions of dollar industry where they've spent a lot of time developing really good wetsuit technology. There's a few, like the seams seem to have particularly been borrowed. And I like the look of it. I'm waiting for a free one.
I don't know if we have your size there.
Had to get in a weight jump.
Yeah, I had to.
You're never coming back.
And then I wanted to try and have a suit that, for me, I really like being able to put it on with no lube.
Yeah.
Sam's, what he's done is just put like a glide skin or a smooth skin around your hood seal, around your wrist seals, around your ankle seals, and also on the chest of the long john.
Yeah.
So you're getting that seal around where you need it to seal,
which is a surfing idea too.
Exactly. But he's been working on that for a long time, slaving away on it. It's a really cool thing. So
cool.
It's exciting to see something that he's been putting into concept.
Yeah.
And now I'm able to go and shoot fish in it. It's pretty cool.
Sick. And that's why you dived in a competitor's suit today. No, I'm just joking. That'd be great if you were there. I dived in one of those new Adreno and Visi skins. I got given one last week, and I've had 2 dives in it. And it's a 3mm suit, and I dived in 19 degrees, and I just don't think it's quite warm enough because it's not an open cell suit.
Nope.
I think it's a 20 degree plus suit, but today we were out here in 23.
Yeah, it'd have to be 23.
Yeah, I reckon.
I didn't check actually.
But I felt it was great, and it's so easy to put on. Like, it's got great flex. I like it so far. I don't know how it's going to behave with compression and stuff over time, but so far so good.
Should be a little workhorse for you.
Yeah, and quite a buoyant suit too, like initially. It'll be interesting to see the characteristics of it over a bit of time.
Well, you see that like with, especially like you're saying, a lot of the surfing neoprene. So they've got, within their neoprene, the way that they get a lot of stretch out of them is a higher density of bubbles.
Yep.
And so with that, you get a lot of stretch out of it. And with that, obviously, more buoyancy because there's a higher density of bubbles in it. So, yeah, you may need to wear a little bit more weight. It will also compress a little bit over time, like when you start, especially in those depths. Like if you start going 20 meters into that second atmosphere, you'll feel it probably pressurize a little bit.
That sounds like a good brand name for.
What's that? Pressurized?
Like 2-atmosphere diver, like. I'm a 29.4 psi pressure diver, Like my lungs are only at a third of their volume. It's funny some of the stuff we talk about that no one else would understand.
Nah, not at all.
Oh, good. Where can people connect with you? Are you on social media and stuff?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram. Some Instagrams. Taylor's a girl's name.
Taylor's a girl's name?
Yeah, mate, yeah.
Oh, is that like one of those battle rap things where you give people a joke because they're going to make it anyway?
Exactly, pretty
nice.
well. Yeah. There's,
do you spell it Taylh?
O-R. No, that's...
A-H. Come on, bro, you've got to do it. No, cool. All right, so Taylor's a guild name. I'll link that up in today's show notes. So people go to noobspearo.com/Taylor, Tahlah. I'll have some of these Dreno gear videos that they've been working on, as well as I'll link up the Saltskin suit and Taylor's on Instagram as well, and connect with him, give him a shout out, and say hello. Pester him with any questions. I'm sure he'll be particularly. You're always helpful with new divers, so hats off to you, really, because, everyone that encounters you, I think they get the sense of stoke, and you still love helping people, and I've got heaps of ideas out of you already on this trip, so it's really good to chat with you.
Absolutely. I appreciate your time, my friend.
Cool, man. So round 2 at some stage in the future?
Absolutely, my friend.
All good. Some absolute knowledge bombs today from Taylor Slattery. It was a real pleasure getting to know him and dive with him. This week's episode was night 1 on board liveaboard charter out on the Eastern Voyager out on the Great Barrier Reef, sort of down in the bunker group. It was care of Adreno, and I got to do 4 interviews while I was out there, 1 every night, and jeepers, 2 diving sessions every day and an interview every night. I was absolutely buggered by the time I went to sleep. But so in the next coming weeks, I've got Tim Nielsen, who's the owner of Adreno. We get to hear the full Adreno story, so it's really cool because they've been sponsoring the show for so long. It was great to finally get that story out, and I'm looking forward to sharing that with you next week. After that, the week after, I've got the Back to Basics boys, Strick and Az. They've been much requested for a long, long time. Really enjoyed diving with those boys. Spent a day and a half diving with them. Had an absolute blast. Those guys are even better in person than they are on their YouTube channel, so that was cool. And then the final week, I did a full trip debrief with the 15 other Spearos that were on board this boat. Had an absolute blast. And so I'm looking forward to sharing those interviews with you in the coming weeks. Big thanks to Robin Cornelian for editing this episode. And if you love the Noob Spearo podcast, I'd definitely encourage you to come and be a patron listener. Head over to patreon.com/Noob Spearo and support the show on an episode-by-episode basis. Every single dollar raised goes towards funding trips where I get to come out and meet you guys, the listeners, do live interviews on the road, and go spearing. And I've been loving these trips lately. Like New Zealand, I got out March to shoot a big kingfish. I just did this trip out the Great Barrier Reef. Despite coronavirus, I've managed to get out travelling and spearing twice already this year, so I'm absolutely bloody spoiled. Loving it, and I really love the live interviews too, so thanks for your support to all the Patreon listeners. Hey, see you in a week. Tim Nielsen, let's do it.